Hello and welcome to another video. So, this is the ferry Momokaze, just leaving Uta port in Onomichi. This ferry links Onomichi city with Momoshima and Tsuneishi. Momoshima is actually a pleasant little island, and the ferry service really deserves to be better used. From Onomichi, I was the only passenger. Anyway, I digress. Today I didn't take the ferry to visit Momoshima, pleasant as it is. Actually, I came here to Uta port to take a completely different ferry. This ferry, in fact. This is the Utado Ferry, and it links Uta port with Tozaki port. The two ports are on two sides of a narrow strait, and the journey between them takes just 3 or so minutes. What's more, there's no timetable. The system works like this. At both of the ports there's a little button to press, and that sets a light flashing. Even if the ferry is at the opposite port, as soon as the ferry captain spots the light, he'll cross to pick up whoever's waiting. There may be a few cars to pick up, or, as was the case when I crossed from Uta to Tozaki, there was just me, one single passenger. Actually, sometimes, like this time in fact, even though the ferry has left the port, it'll turn around and go back to pick up another passenger. You certainly can't beat that for service. The service is basically intended as a way to get between Mukaishima, the island where Uta port is, and Tozaki, which is on the mainland, without having to take a long detour to use the bridge, which links Mukaishima to the mainland. The ferry service is, if you like, a moving bridge. Certainly, given the narrow width of the strait, it would seem more than possible to build a bridge. But I'm so glad that they haven't. Of course, a bridge would be more convenient. But I love these little local ports and the ferries that serve them. So many ferry services have disappeared from the Seto Inland Sea compared to decades ago, and with every route that is cancelled or abolished, a little bit of what makes the inland sea so special, so appealing, disappears too. Having arrived in Uta, I had almost 2.5 hours until the ferry back to Onomichi, and I decided to catch that from Tozaki port. With there being no timetable for the Utado ferry, and even allowing for the ferry to have to cross from the other side to pick me up, I still only needed about 10 minutes at maximum to get across to Tozaki. So, I decided to spend some time by the sea at Uta first. It was a beautiful autumn day, and the view out over the inland sea was spectacular. I used to live on Etajima, an island also in the inland sea, but having moved to Higashi Hiroshima, I really miss this sort of view. I sat on the sea wall and had the little picnic I'd brought with me, and basked in the warm autumn sun, gazing out at the islands, the glittering ripples on the waves, and the sunlit clouds in the distance. It was wonderful. The only sound was the waves and the occasional passing fishing boat. High above, a tobi, a kite, that's the bird, not the toy, soared, probably enjoying the view just as much as I was. They really should bottle this sort of relaxation and sell it as a tonic. It would be superb for people with stress. A fair while before my ferry back to Onomichi was due to arrive at Tozaki, I crossed over from Uta so that I was there in plenty of time. As I said, I was the only passenger on the ferry. I felt quite bad about using the little button to call the ferry over from Tozaki port, so I waited until it brought someone else over to Uta and got on it then. The ferry from Uta to Tozaki, or the other way round of course, costs just 180 yen for a foot passenger, and as I say, it took about 3 minutes. I think a fair part of that 3 minutes was having to take a slight detour to deal with the strong current in the strait. There's nothing other than a vending machine at either of the ferry ports, but if anything, Tozaki is even more basic than Uta. Having said that though, there doesn't really need to be anything. It's not like you need to wait more than a few minutes for the ferry, after all. And on a beautiful day, like when I visited, the view out over the inland sea more than makes up for the lack of facilities. I knew from having visited before that there was a small settlement just a few minutes' walk from Tozaki port, so I took a stroll there. As I remembered, there wasn't really that much, but I have to say it seemed like a calm, relaxed sort of place. Anyway, I went back to the port and spent the last few minutes or so before Momokaze arrived back from Momoshima just drinking in the view. It really was perfect. The Utado Ferry also made another quick trip across the strait. You know, ferries like this really do deserve to survive. Of course, there's no way for me to say how useful they are to many people. But, taking the Utado Ferry as an example of the small ferries that run here and there across the inland sea, on a weekend afternoon, in the time I was there, so about 2 hours, there were perhaps 10 cars. Also, there was a fair number of cyclists. I didn't see more than a handful of foot passengers though. I certainly wouldn't say the service is raking in money hand over fist. But, to be honest, that isn't the point. As far as I'm concerned, services like the Utado Ferry should survive because they're a glimpse of tradition, of the way things used to be. For me, that's much more important than profits. I realise that it may be a bit too much to hope for new ferry services, but I really hope that the current ferry services across the inland sea do survive. A world where not everything is based on money and profits appeals to me. A world where not everything has to be the most convenient, the most efficient, but where there's a place for the quirky, let's say. A world where survival or abolishment isn't decided just by how much money is made, but also, at least in part, by whether something contributes to the pleasantness of life in a local community. For me, the Utado Ferry is absolutely worthwhile on this latter count, even if on nothing else. Anyway, I think that's about it for this video. I do hope you enjoyed the video and this brief glimpse at the Utado Ferry. The Seto Inland Sea really is a breathtakingly beautiful place. And in my opinion, ferries like this only add to its beauty. Anyway, please leave a thumbs up or a comment if you did enjoy this video, and I hope to see you in another one very soon. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.